Speedrunning is a niche hobby. While there are thousands of runners and millions of viewers interested in speedruns, it's yet to break into the mainstream consciousness. But that doesn't mean it hasn't made an effort. Over the years, speedrunning has topped the headlines time and time again, making news and introducing itself to a wider range of people in often unexpected ways. Welcome to speedrunning in the mainstream. The introduction of anything resembling speedrunning to a mass audience came from an unlikely place. The Wizard is a 1989 film released by Universal Pictures. The movie follows a trio of kids as they make their way to California. The youngest of the children has a knack for video games, so they decided to enter him into Video Armageddon, a video game tournament with the grand prize of $50,000. The film would reach its climax at this tournament, with the final game being revealed to be the unreleased Super Mario Bros. 3. By this point, SMB3 has been out in Japan for over a year, but would not be released in the US until February of 1990. This is where something resembling speedrunning would make its appearance. Competitors were given 10 minutes to accumulate the highest score they could. In order to accomplish this effectively, they need to adopt one of speedrunning's most quintessential features, a route. When it comes to time, not all points are created equally. Some things require more time or provide fewer points. With effective routing, competitors are able to weed out inefficient points, allowing them to collect more points overall. In many respects, this is something of an inverted speedrun. While the standard approach to speedrunning has runners using a timer that counts up, they could just as easily use one that counts down. When the timer reaches 0, they've missed their goal, whether it be a new personal best, a world record, or anything else. If they finish the run before it reaches 0, whatever time is left is the amount they beat their goal by. The only difference between this and what occurred in The Wizard is the goal. Since the competitors were aiming for as high a score as possible, they were incentivized to use up the full clock. Had the goal been to reach a certain score as quickly as possible, this tournament would have been a one-to-one introduction to speedrunning to everyone who saw it. While the movie was not a smash hit, it was notable in several ways. In addition to being many people's introduction to Super Mario Bros. 3, the film would star a young Fred Savage. Fresh off the success of the television show The Wonder Years, Fred was at the peak of his career. Despite this, he wasn't the most popular actor in the film. That honor would go to Tobey Maguire, making his film debut in an uncredited role. The Wizard and Video Armageddon was only the precursor to the real deal though. 1990 would see the first iteration of the Nintendo World Championship. The event would begin in Dallas, Texas before touring the country. In each city, contestants would be divided into 3 age groups. Once 30 city champions had been crowned in each age bracket, the main event would commence in Universal Studios Hollywood. The structure of the event would mirror what took place in The Wizard. Contestants were provided a unique cartridge specially tailored to the event. The cartridge featured copies of the original Super Mario Bros., the 1987 title Rad Racer, and 1989's Tetris. The goal was to accumulate the highest number of points across the 3 games within 6 minutes 21 seconds, but it wasn't as straightforward as it sounds. The games must be played in sequential order, beginning with Super Mario Bros., continuing to Rad Racer, before ending with Tetris. In Super Mario Bros., the goal was to collect 50 coins. The player is provided with 99 lives, allowing Mario to die and respawn essentially forever. To complete Rad Racer, the player simply needed to beat the first level of the game, whereas the purpose of Tetris was to rack up as many points as possible with whatever time was remaining. While players could technically spend as much time in Super Mario Bros. Or Rad Racer acquiring points as they wished, the structure of competition disincentivized playing anything but Tetris. The points from Super Mario Bros. Would remain unchanged, but Rad Racer was given a 10 times multiplier, while Tetris was given 25 times. In essence, this made playing either of the first 2 games for even a second longer than needed wasted time, as it would be better spent in Tetris. Due to this, speedrunning through Mario and Rad Racer was the optimal strategy. The true nature of speedrunning shows through most prevalently in the Mario section. Since the goal is to acquire 50 coins, it's necessary to route out inefficient coins so as to not waste time. This leads to a rather interesting optimal route. Mario begins by hitting the 2 question mark blocks near ground level that possess coins, before entering a pipe that takes him to a coin room containing an additional 19 coins. Upon exiting the coin room, a death is taken to warp Mario back to a checkpoint earlier in the level. Once here, Mario jumps on top of a brick and hits another question mark block for coin 22. He then jumps under the bricks and proceeds to hit it 11 times so that it runs out of coins, before hitting 3 more question mark blocks and taking a death to respawn with the bricks and blocks replenished. At this point, all it takes is repeating most of the last section and Mario has his 50 coins. In comparison to this, Rad Racer is much more straightforward. The tournament cartridge simply contains the first level of the game, so the optimal strategy is to simply play well. Fast driving is beneficial both for accumulating points in Rad Racer and moving on to Tetris as quickly as possible. Once in Tetris, the goal remains playing quickly, but only as an indirect consequence of needing to gain points. After 6 minutes and 21 seconds had passed, scores would be totaled and a victor would be crowned. The winner of each age bracket would be rewarded with a $10,000 US savings bond, a 1990 Geo Metro convertible, a 40-inch rear projection television set valued at $4,000, a Super Mario trophy, and a pair of Reebok pump shoes. The Nintendo World Championship has gone on to be an instrumental piece of video game history. It's widely considered to be one of the first major esport competitions, but it also was an early example into speedrunning as a medium for competition. It demonstrated the potential speedrunning had on the biggest of stages. When the largest video game company in the world decided it was time to devise a competition, rather than choosing something of absurd difficulty or requiring inhuman technical prowess, they chose to develop a competition focused on speed. When it came time for another tournament, Nintendo would follow the same pattern. At both the 1991 and 1992 Nintendo Campus Challenge, the structure would be about racing through the first two games in order to maximize the amount of time in the final game. The format was so similar between the three tournaments that all of them started out with collecting a certain number of coins in a Mario game. By 1994's Nintendo Power Fest, any pretense that the tournaments weren't just speedruns in disguise had been shed, with the first two games being purely speedrunning. The cartridge started with Super Mario: The Lost Levels. Here, the competitors had to beat level 1-1 as quickly as possible. No bells or whistles, just speedrun 1-1. Then, players were on to Super Mario Kart. Once again, the challenge was about speed. Here, players had to race through 5 laps of Mario Circuit 1. It was only when competitors reached Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball that the focus would shift away from speedrunning. While the earliest esports events stretched back to the 70s, and tournaments like Nintendo World Championship would help establish the concept, esports as a whole wouldn't begin to fully take shape until the 2000s. The advent of competitive online gaming lent itself to a whole host of esports possibilities. As the scene became more established, organizations focused on esports would begin popping up. Although the 2000s had seen esports shift away from speedrunning in favor of shooters or MOBAs, the 2010s oversaw a reintroduction of speedrunning into the world of esports. Organizations wished to diversify their rosters, leading many to sign notable speedrunners to their teams. This would in turn introduce speedrunning to the fans of these organizations, expanding the scope of speedrunning into the adjacent audience of competitive video games. Perhaps the most interesting example of an esports organization signing a speedrunner is when Red Bull signed Grand Pooh Bear. As a whole, Red Bull is a unique company. Their main product is their energy drink, which is the third most valuable soft drink after Coke and Pepsi. Rather than adhering to a normal marketing campaign though, Red Bull chooses to spend their money on spectacles. For a company so closely associated with extreme sports, signing a speedrunner to the roster may seem like an unusual choice. Red Bull has historically been willing to support markets regardless of size in the hopes of seeing the scene grow. Through signing a speedrunner to their roster, Red Bull is following a pattern of positioning themselves to benefit from any potential growth the scene sees, while also further legitimizing speedrunning to people on the outside looking in. In looking for a speedrunner to find, Red Bull signed Grand Pooh Bear. Having grown up a snowboarder, Grand Pooh Bear would turn to speedrunning after suffering an accident in 2013. This link between extreme sports and speedrunning made Grand Pooh Bear uniquely situated to represent Red Bull. Throughout his time in the scene, Grand Pooh Bear has consistently been one of the most visible and recognizable faces, helping break speedrunning to the masses. One of the more unique ventures between Grand Pooh Bear and Red Bull came in 2019 at Lollapalooza. Lollapalooza is one of the largest music festivals in the world, catering to fans of genres as varied as rock, pop, hip-hop, and EDM. That year, Red Bull set up a venue at the festival focused on gaming. This presented Grand Pooh Bear with the opportunity to show off speedrunning to the hundreds of thousands of attendees at the event. Red Bull is far from the only group helping to raise up speedrunning though. While his esports team has yet to sign any runners to the roster, few people have done more to elevate the platform of speedrunning than the YouTuber Penguin Zero, better known as Critical or Charlie. At this point, Critical is something of a cottage industry on YouTube, with millions tuning in multiple times a day to hear his commentary and reactions. Charlie's history in speedrunning stretches back to the 2010s, and since then, he has consistently been one of speedrunning's largest advocates. Oftentimes, all it takes for a game to develop a community is a little attention, and Critical has proven more than willing to provide a jump start. One such game is Mr. Krabs Overdoses on Ketamine. Seemingly overnight, the game went from a meme to one of the fastest growing speedruns after Charlie showed interest in the game. More than that though, Charlie himself would go on to be a top runner of the game. In the span of just over a month, Critical would post 9 videos, garnering tens of millions of views and skyrocketing its popularity. Charlie's advocacy of speedrunning came to a head at the end of 2022 with the announcement of his $10,000 speedrun challenge. He had selected an obscure game by the name of Amok Runner for people to speedrun. Over the course of 2 weeks, players would compete to see who had the fastest time, with prizes being awarded to the top finishers. Critical had specifically selected this in part due to the fact that it lacked any speedrunning community. In a matter of days, hundreds of people would descend on the game, attempting runs and discovering tricks, all in pursuit of making the game faster. In doing so, Charlie had made a spectacle out of the event, with it drawing both established and brand new speedrunners alike. At the end of it, Critical would create a world record history on the event, detailing everything from near misses and theories to trick discoveries and new world records. By nature of his size and the compensation, the competition would also draw attention from sources far outside the traditional reach of speedrunning. The event proved to be such a success that Charlie opted to hold a second one the following month. This time, the chosen game was Exodus from the Earth. Unlike Amok Runner, Exodus from the Earth had been speedrun before, with the world record prior to the competition being a 1:04:12. By the end, this time would be whittled down to a 20:52, showcasing the lengths and innovations that can be had when speedrunners are given motivation. This would only be further underlined with the challenge's third iteration, with Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard being absolutely annihilated, having gone from a nearly 2-hour time to just under 12 minutes. While Charlie may be one of the largest YouTubers advocating for speedrunning, he's far from the only one. In fact, YouTube itself has helped in speedrunning's push for the mainstream. Every so often, YouTube will highlight a particular community, giving them a special placement on the front page. On September 12th, 2022, to celebrate World Video Games Day, the speedrunning community would receive this honor. For the day, the logo was changed to show a character running before the timer stops at 4:54, alluding to the any percent world record in Super Mario Bros. 1. Clicking on the logo would take viewers to a video that YouTube made about speedrunning. The video is full of little nods to the culture of speedrunning, everything from discussing the most popular games for speedrunning on the site to noting that they were on their 60-second attempt at recording the video. It also placed several speedrunning content creators front and center, featuring their videos and discussing their content. YouTube also created a blog post about speedrunning to coincide with World Video Games Day, in which they went further in depth to explain speedrunning and the different approaches people take to it. The article is littered with links to different videos and creators, providing a wide-reaching preview into what speedrunning offers, before concluding with a crash course playlist on a variety of speedruns. While YouTube may have spent a day putting speedrunning on the front page of one of the most popular websites, there's another group that lives there daily: late night shows. YouTube has long had an obsession with late night shows. Back in early 2006, the most viewed video on the site was the SNL skit Lazy Sunday, better known as the Chronicles of Narnia Rap. 293 episodes later, on April 11th, 2020, the world was in a different place. The show is returning from a month-long break as Saturday Night Live at home, with the cast members interacting virtually. This necessitated a different approach to skits than normal. Mikey Day would choose to impersonate a Twitch streamer. After most of the routine centers on him dying in Call of Duty, it makes an unexpected pivot at the end to him attempting to speedrun Super Mario Bros. 1. While this was a throwaway bit made during an unusual episode, it's not the only time speedrunning has made its way into late-night television. Part of the gimmick of a late-night show is mixing celebrity interviews with musical or variety entertainment guests. Looking through the guests featured on the late-night show with Stephen Colbert, it's easy to pick out dozens of names belonging to some of the most popular musicians and entertainers. In this sea of blue links though, a certain name may stand out. On July 1st, 2016, ready to perform live to an audience of over 2 million, the entertainment guest was Mitch Flowerpower. Mitch was one of the earliest personalities to blow up from speedrunning. He's long been one of the top players in Super Mario Bros. 3. The segment starts with Mitch and Colbert seated at the interview desk. After a brief introduction of who Mitch is and what speedrunners do, they get down to business. At this point, Mitch was the world record holder of Super Mario Bros. 3's any percent category, with a time of just over 3 minutes. To contextualize this to viewers at home, Colbert analogizes this to a track team running the 4x400 relay, a race in which a team of 4 runners each take turns running a 400-meter lap around a track, before passing off a baton to the next runner who then proceeds to run their lap. He also equates it to the speed it takes someone to eat the microwavable snack Hot Pockets. When Mitch is asked if he believes he could beat Mario 3 faster than 4 people could run a race, or 1 person to eat a Hot Pocket, he responds that he can, and then they're off. In what Colbert would dub the three-legged race, Mitch would be racing the Columbia University men's 4x400 team, as well as Colbert positioned at a microwave with a box of pepperoni Hot Pockets. On play-by-play was sports announcer Ian Eagle, best known for his time calling the Brooklyn Nets. The timer begins, and each competitor starts their task. Just as the timer hits 22 seconds, Mitch finishes level 1. After struggling to get the Hot Pocket out of its wrapper, Colbert finally gets it into the microwave at around the 23-second mark. Unbeknownst to him though, he set the timer without turning off the microwave. This would be a costly mistake, as he would fail to notice and correct the issue until 50 seconds in, at which point Mitch had already completed level 2 and Columbia was about to complete the first handoff. Due to picking a non-carousel microwave, Colbert once again needs to stop at the 73-second mark to manually rotate the Hot Pocket. Mitch reaches a crucial milestone in the run a minute and a half in, collecting the first of 2 warp whistles he needs. 10 seconds later, and Columbia would finish its second handoff, representing the midway and the relay. Another 10 seconds pass, and Colbert's Hot Pocket is finished cooking. Just before the 2-minute mark, Mitch collects his second warp whistle. A few seconds later, Colbert takes his first bite and appears to burn his mouth. Mitch begins World 7 just before Columbia finishes its last handoff and their anchor starts running. The race is coming down to the wire. While Mitch is setting up the wrong warp to beat the game, Columbia's runner has a single lap remaining and Colbert just has a few bites to go. With a time of 3:12, Colbert beats both the Columbia men's relay team and Mitch Flower Power in the three-legged race. While Mitch didn't win the race, he introduced millions of people to the concept of speedrunning. When given the opportunity to participate in one of traditional media's most ingrained institutions, Mitch provided an entertaining and commendable performance. The segment would end with Colbert thanking Mitch for participating. Colbert doesn't stop there though. He proceeds to shout out Summer Games Done Quick, which was taking place 2 days after Mitch was on.
Check out Summer Games Done Quick, a 24-hour live stream for charity on July 3rd featuring Mitch Fowler. It's going to be through the 10th of July.
Games Done Quick is a speedrunning marathon that's held twice a year. For over a decade, the marathon's focus has been to raise money for various charities. This is by far the most visible event in all of speedrunning, drawing millions of viewers from all over the world. To date, the event has raised over $40 million. Each year, the marathon is broadcast on twitch.tv, pulling in massive viewership. In July of 2016, a few days after being mentioned by Colbert, Games Done Quick averaged 101,136 concurrent viewers. During the same month, Twitch as a whole averaged 599,804 viewers. At that point, for every 6 people watching Twitch, 1 of them was watching GDQ. Games Done Quick is far from the only charity marathon for speedrunning though. Events like the European Speedrunner Assembly and RTA in Japan pull in thousands of viewers and showcase hundreds of runners, providing exposure to communities of every size while allowing runners to showcase their craft when raising money. When considering how mainstream something is, it's often important to look at the numbers. Oftentimes, the larger it is, the more mainstream. So if you enjoyed the video, how about giving it a like and subscribing to the channel? For however niche speedrunning may be now, many have undertaken efforts that have exposed the hobby to others. At a point in time, the most common way for people to be introduced to speedrunning was coming up with the idea themselves. In time, these people would form communities and begin the slow process of growing through innate intrigue. Speedrunning has now reached the point where millions of people's first impressions are the scene's history of top runners. However large speedrunning grows is impossible to say. What can be certain is that it's experienced a meteoric rise that has garnered the attention of people in unlikely places.